had a lot of big problems in the past, and they fall in two categories that I think are interesting to compare. One is running out of resources, and the other one having environmental problems. And I've studied the history of both, and I've written books about it, and I keep following it. And it turns out that when you go back in the past and you had these two kind of problems, every time there was lots of people who said we have to do less of what we do. For instance, at one point in London, they had so much cow dung in the streets, and they figured out if our number of horses continues to go up, we'll have like 1 meter of cow dung. How do we handle that? They handle it by changing to cars. And they had similar situations where they were running out of coal, they thought. In 1866, Jevons, the famous economist, said that they were about to run out of coal. And the year after, the finance minister Gladstone said they had to pay back the debt really quickly because they were running out of coal. But then they invented some new technologies, so it turned out with those technologies there was a lot more coal. And then they turned to petrol and natural gas. And then, of course, people were afraid of running out of that. And it turned out it didn't run out at all. So what happened in this situation was that they came up with new technologies all the time, and with the new technologies there was more. But we have a similar situation with problems with pollution. At one time, people thought that there would be so much smoke in the air that the sun really wouldn't reach the big cities, and they would get really cold, have almost no sunlight, and people would have to wear gas masks. So maybe people who are growing up, young people today haven't seen those books, but one advantage of being a bit older is I saw those books and I panicked when I was young, and it turned out it was all wrong. And it was all wrong, not because people stopped using cars, but because they invented, for instance, a catalyzer. And they invented scrubbing for chimneys from carbon or coal, etc., etc. So what the situation we have is that we have an exponential development of technologies. So we keep inventing new things, and some of them are really, really dramatic. I'll give you a few examples of really, really dramatic technologies just to set the picture. One is, actually it's got nothing directly to do with energy or pollution, but this is quantum computing. So today, if you want to find out which two numbers do you need to multiply in order to get the number 15, or that would be 3 and 5. You don't even need a computer for that. But if you say, okay, we need to do the similar calculation for a number that has 617 digits, that would take the biggest computer we have today in the world up to 1 billion years to figure that out. Up to 1 billion years. Now, scientists who work with quantum computers have told me that they believe 10 years from now, a quantum computer can do that same calculation in up to 100 seconds. So this is billions times quicker, and it will also use a tiny, tiny fraction of the energy than the big computer would use. Another example is actually in energy, and now we're getting closer to the global warming thing. So if you look at energy, the brief history of energy, in the Stone Age and up until a few hundred years ago, the only way to heat up stuff was to burn either wood or cow dung or dung that you would find. And there's a lot of carbon in that. Then they switched to coal. There's actually the proportion between hydrogen, which is what gives the energy, and carbon, which is just a matrix that carries the hydrogen, was better. So there's less carbon in coal compared to the energy than there's in wood. And then from that they switched to petrol, and then you have even less coal. Then they switched to gas, which has a lot less coal. And this is a part of our conversion where we get less and less proportion of coal in our energy mix. And actually it turns out that this is following an exponential curve. And we reached the midpoint in that exponential curve away from coal in 1935. So why are we emitting more and more coal or creating more and more carbon dioxide? It's because our energy consumption goes up. But the next thing that came was nuclear power. So the first versions of nuclear power had some technology issues, and we've had 2 serious accidents, one in Japan, one in Chernobyl, and some smaller accidents around the world. But when nuclear power was first developed in the United States in the 1960s, they were testing 2 different technologies. One was based on uranium and the other one on thorium. And they chose uranium because you could make nuclear bombs as a result of the waste. And it was the same choice that Russia made, that England made, and France made, because everybody wanted nuclear bombs. So they also tested thorium. And they didn't choose it because you couldn't make the nuclear bombs. And turned out that it worked with thorium. And now there are companies around the world that are working with governments and companies that are working with thorium, looking to implement it, so restart this old technology. And so how much thorium do we have? We have at least enough to power the entire world for about 100,000 years. Thorium is everywhere. There's almost every nation could be energy independent with thorium. So you would not have this political dependency on relatively few nations. How much thorium do you need in order to power the world? You would need, for one person with a good lifestyle, a rich person, or a rich country person, you would need about a golf ball of thorium, like this much. And the waste, and this would be your entire energy consumption, your entire life. The waste from that would be the size of like a third of a golf ball. That is the entire waste you would create. And that waste would be radioactive, but not very. And so it would gradually decay, and after 300 years would be completely harmless. So very easy to handle. And so this is a technology that exists, that we could implement, and if we did it on a massive scale, we could really stop emitting CO2. Of course, it doesn't make sense to base anything on a single technology, so we could combine it with some solar panels and some wind, etc., but we have the technologies.